Anticipation. It's something we see a lot, whether it's from an instructor standpoint or it's a newer shooter or somebody that you've been shooting for a long time. You've been shooting yourself or around other people, you've seen someone anticipate that shot. So what is it? All right, well, you go to the range, you draw your gun out on target, you put your sights on right where you want, you feel everything, you go to squeeze that trigger and bam, that shot goes low into the inside. And what I mean by that is, if you're a right-handed shooter, it goes low and left. If you're a left-handed shooter, it goes low and right. It doesn't have to be to the right, but generally the shot is low, right? Depending on how you do it. So what does that mean? Anticipation is when you go to break your shot, you either start to manage recoil and kind of have that jerk response to put the sights back on target before the shot goes off, or as you're pulling the trigger, your hands tense up and you kind of clip that shot down. So understanding what it is, now we need to talk about what causes it and how to fix it. So the first thing we're going to look at is what you feel. Then we're going to talk about vision and what you see visually. Then we're going to talk about how we manipulate the trigger. So let's talk about the feel portion first. Most people that shoot, you say you're a right-handed shooter, that's your dominant hand, right? So you write with that hand, you brush your teeth with that hand, you fill in the blank, whatever you want to do with that hand, right? So that's the hand we use. Not everybody, but a lot of people. So this is our dominant hand, right? Our firing hand. For me, it's the right hand. What this hand is doing when it's firing the gun is it's a solid firing platform to effectively pull the trigger, right? I'm not managing a whole hell of a lot of recoil with it. I mean, I am, because this all works together in one continuous, thing up here in our grip. It should all be synced together. But really, that's what I'm thinking about. I want a solid wall for the gun to fire off of. And I want to be able to manipulate the trigger. My support hand, I think of as grip, strength, and drive. This hand is getting on that gun. It's crushing it, right? And I'm applying torque or rotational force forwards and getting as much purchase on there as I can. So if this hand is grip, strength, and drive, and this is a solid platform, which one sounds more dominant? Well, to me, it's my left hand, my support hand. And the reason being is that when we know that recoil management breaks down after every 3 to 5 rounds for an intermediate to novice shooter. So if it does that and it's breaking down after 3 to 5 rounds, usually that means the support hand isn't doing its job. So instead of thinking of our firing hand as the dominant hand, we can just change our frame of reference to make the support hand our dominant hand. Then it's less likely to forget doing its job, and this hand is more or less likely to take over, right? And that's where we get some of these pulled shots. And to kind of show you what that means, I'll kind of break this down for you, right? So if we look at the gun, one thing we do when we teach people to shoot single-handed at first, that's very difficult because a lot of people are pulling rounds all over the place. But if I squeeze with my whole hand, pinky, everything, and I go to pull the trigger, watch the muzzle. You see that little bit of movement down I can get it to do? But if I simply take my pinky off the gun, it doesn't move nearly as much. Put the pinky back on, it starts moving more. Take it off, it doesn't move as much. Reason for that is because this finger is the farthest away from the muzzle, so it's got the most leverage. So we just simply tell people at the beginning, eventually we want to put it back on there and really grip the shit out of the gun, but we tell them just take your pinky off the gun and fire. And guess what? Those rounds start getting a lot closer to the dot. So understanding all that, part of your issue might be your grip. Anticipation, right? We just talked about feel, now we're going to talk about vision and what happens visually that can potentially cause anticipation. So what we're going to talk about is something called a micro adjustment. You put your sights on target, and one thing we know is that the sights really never stop moving, right? But we can control that or we can time that. They're always going to move somewhat, especially as you start to pull that trigger. You might see that sight veer off one way or just a little bit. Well, that's why we practice good trigger pull. We want it straight back the whole time without disrupting the sights, knowing that our whole body is holding this little gun, right? So when you get a micro adjustment, what's happening is you've got your sights on target. Now you start creeping that trigger, right? Slowly pulling that trigger, pull, 70, 80, 90, 95%, the gun's about to go off. And when it does, your sights start to move a little bit and you overcorrect those sights back and try and move them back as you're breaking that shot, and it causes you to tense up, and then bam, we get that low into the inside, or just low in general. So how do we fix that, right? Well, we fix it by simply how we pull the trigger. And the thing I'll tell you is, one, this right here is an automated reaction of the eyes seeing the sights on target. This, pulling the trigger, never tells the brain the gun's about to go off. So if you're that kind of person that keeps creeping the trigger, and then you're finding issues right as the shot breaks, be more deliberate about how you pull the trigger. Take out the slack, feel the wall, take the shot. Slack, Slack, check your sights, press, right? Or just wall shot, however you want to think about it. There's a ton of cues you can use. Anyway, so if you're seeing that visually in your sights, that could be a cause of it. So instead, avoid the lag time of your sights being on target and then taking that time to break the shot, because things are going to move and things are going to change. So as soon as your sights are where you want, immediately break that shot and let this be a reaction of the eyes. So one of the things we see a lot of times is just simply how people manipulate the trigger. You'll see a lot of these click bangers. People pin the trigger and they slowly start to let off, and they're trying to time this next shot as they let off, and it's like click bang, over and over and over. You're making your trigger pull and how you fire the gun twice as difficult and twice as complicated. So instead of that, we should make things as efficient as possible, right? We know that speed is a product of doing things more efficiently and sooner, and this guy Scott I know said that, and this other stuff. So if we can just be more efficient in how we pull the trigger, we will do it sooner, thus will make us faster. And usually what happens is it simplifies things, right? We're not gonna mess stuff up as much. So instead of this whole, like JJ says, the click bangers, right, and pinning the trigger, which is really commonplace in law enforcement training, because I think it's just an institutionalized thing, or just in general, is that this is a pistol. It's not a hunting rifle. It's not a sniper rifle. We don't shoot it like that. We don't let the shot surprise us. So there's a process to pulling our trigger. So one great example is Rob Latham. I believe what he says is sights, touch, wall, fire, right? Well, back in my old unit, we used to say sight, slack, press, right? Or slack, sight, press, excuse me. You can switch them up. We take the slack out of the gun. Once we see our sights are on target, then we react to that and we press the trigger. So simply what we're doing is we're feeling the wall. That's it. We feel the wall, and as soon as our sights are where we want, boom, we break the shot and we reset as fast as we can back to that wall to be shooter ready. Again, another thing that JJ says. So we want to be shooter ready as fast as possible. Get back to that wall as quick as we can. I'm not riding the trigger back. I want to race it back. I know right where it's at because I practice it. Race it back, get to the wall, and as soon as my sights are where they want, I should be ready to fire. The last thing I should wait on is the sights. Feel the wall, take the shot. And I'm not creeping it 70, 80, I'm not slowly creeping it. As soon as I feel it, I know exactly how much pressure it takes to fire that gun. And then just break the shot. It's as simple as that. Find your process, whether it's slack, sight, press, whether it's like Rob Latham says, when he says sights, touch, wall, fire, or whether it's just wall, shot, right? And pull to your reference point to remember to pull the trigger straight back. Wall shot, over and over and over, and that should help you out.